This week isn't just big, it's game-changing. General Hospital.
The wind off Pier 55 carried the scent of salt, gasoline, and something darker, fear that hadn't yet settled. Port Charles had seen its share of violence, betrayal, and heartbreak, but what unfolded over the last few days had shaken even the most hardened residents. And as the week of March 30th through April 3rd began, the aftermath rippled through every corner of the city. Jason Morgan was gone. Not dead, at least, not yet, but taken. And in Port Charles, sometimes that was worse. Monday, the silence after the storm. The pier had been cleaned, but it wasn't forgotten. A faint outline of chalk still clung stubbornly to the weathered wood, marking where Cullum had fallen after the gunshot. The echoes of that night lingered in whispers, in glances, in the way people hesitated before speaking Jason's name. At General Hospital, Lucas paced outside the ICU, his scrubs wrinkled and stained, his mind racing. He had done everything he could, saved Cullum's life against all odds, but it didn't feel like a victory.
Marco was dead.
And that changed everything. Inside another room, Britt sat upright in her bed, pale but defiant. Portia had cleared her physically, but emotionally, that was another story. "I need to see him," Britt insisted again, her voice trembling despite her effort to stay composed. Nathan stood near the door, arms crossed. "You already did. You said goodbye." "That wasn't goodbye," she snapped. That was a moment stolen from me. I need more." Nathan softened, but only slightly. "You don't get more. Not with the WSB involved." Britt looked away, her eyes glassy. "Then we take him back." Tuesday, secrets and promises. Across town, Lulu sat at her kitchen table, staring at Rocco. Her son hadn't said much since that night. He barely ate, barely slept. And when he did speak, it was in fragments, half-formed sentences that trailed off into silence. "You saved him," Nathan had told her gently. But Lulu wasn't sure if that was the truth or a burden. "Rocco," she said softly, reaching across the table. "You can tell me anything." He hesitated, his fingers tightening around his glass of juice. "Dad can't know." Her heart sank. "What happened at the pier, it stays between us," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Jason said so." Lulu closed her eyes briefly. Jason's influence, always complicated, always dangerous, had now extended to her son.
And Dante?
He was already unraveling. Wednesday, lines are drawn. At the PCPD, Dante slammed a file onto his desk, frustration boiling over. "This doesn't make sense," he snapped. Jason confesses, then gets taken by the WSB, just like that. Chase leaned against the desk, arms folded. "It's Jason. Nothing about him is simple." Dante shook his head.
"No.
This is bigger. Someone's pulling strings." And he had a name in mind. Sonny Corinthos. At the same time, Sonny stood in his office, staring out at the harbor. Sidwell's threat echoed in his mind. "I know where Kevin and Ace are." It wasn't just a threat, it was leverage. And Sonny knew it. "Rick," Sonny said, turning as the lawyer entered. "Tell me you've got something." Rick adjusted his tie, his expression measured. "I've got options, but none of them are clean." Sonny smirked faintly. "Since when do we do clean?" Thursday, a dangerous plan. Valentine stood in the shadows of his living room, his mind working through possibilities like a chess grandmaster plotting his next move. Carly watched him carefully. "You've got that look," she said. "The one that usually ends in chaos." Valentine smiled slightly. Not chaos. Precision. And Jason? He's being held off-grid. WSB black site, most likely. Carly crossed her arms. So, how do we get him back? Valentine stepped closer, lowering his voice. We don't break him out. Carly frowned. Then what? We make them let him go. Meanwhile, at General Hospital, Josslyn stood outside Cullum's room, her hand gripping the doorknob. She had said it out loud, offered to kill him.
And now?
Now she was here. She pushed the door open slowly. Cullum's eyes snapped open, their gazes locked. And suddenly, Josslyn wasn't so sure who was in control. Friday, the breaking point. Lucas sat alone in the locker room, his head in his hands. Ava found him there. You did everything you could, she said gently. Lucas looked up, his eyes red. It wasn't enough. Ava sat beside him. It never feels like it is. He let out a bitter laugh.
Marco's dead.
Cullum's alive. Tell me how that makes sense. It doesn't, Ava admitted. But that's not on you. Lucas shook his head. It feels like it is. Ava reached for his hand. Then let me help you carry it. Across town, Alexis sat in her office, watching Danny. He hadn't spoken much since finding Marco. Trauma had a way of stealing words. You can stay here as long as you need, Alexis said softly. Danny nodded, his gaze distant. And Jason, he asked suddenly. Alexis hesitated. I'm going to bring him back, she said finally. Danny looked at her, searching for certainty. I promise. Saturday, truths come out. Olivia's voice echoed through the Quartermain mansion. A hooker? She repeated, her outrage unmistakable. Michael winced. Mom. No, don't mom me, she snapped. Wiley is asking questions, and you're bringing that kind of influence into his life? Wiley stood nearby, wide-eyed. What's a hooker? He asked innocently. The room fell silent. Brooklyn exchanged a glance with Chase. Okay, Chase said, stepping in. Maybe we all take a breath. But Olivia wasn't done.
No.
This family has standards. Brooklyn raised an eyebrow. Do we? And just like that, the argument exploded. Sunday, the calm before, what comes next? As the week came to a close, Port Charles held its breath. Jason's fate remained uncertain. Sidwell's threat loomed larger than ever. And the lines between right and wrong blurred further with each passing day. Britt stood at the edge of the pier once more, staring out at the water.
I
meant what I said, she whispered into the wind. I love you. Somewhere out there, Jason was fighting. And in Port Charles, so was everyone else.